into our player screens here as we introduce our first player here. That's going to be Jamie Tan from Malaysia, representing with their Malaysia national top 8 as their achievement. You know, these World Cup matches are, you know, their own achievements in and of themselves. You get to play a lot against a lot of talented players, so hopefully they can put another title on that achievement rack there. But more on the team, I think that's the first thing my eyes are drawn to personally. I see a Toadscruel, a Wheezing. Paul, why don't you kind of try to explain to us what this team is doing?
Yeah, this team is honestly more like hyper offensive kind of thing, because you have a lot of very powerful Pokemon. We have 2 choice lock Pokemon, the choice specs Weezing with neutralizing gas. We have the choice scarf type Lotion, which has access to our option to dish out a lot of damage. But we also have the Toadscruel, which probably some of you have seen already in some official events. Toadscruel has a very interesting synergy with Weezing, because it's a very fast Pokemon with a kind of like weird ability, but with Weezing on the field, you can negate your own ability and get access to those really fast spores with neutralizing gas on the field. Then we also have Tailwind, Kilowattrel, Garchomp, and finally Corviknight, which is in a really good spot in my opinion in this format because of its very nice defensive typing in Flying and Steel.
And I mean, we just saw it win the Lille regional champion, regional championship. So Corviknight, as you said, has an amazing spot, mainly able to do really well into the top threat in the meta. That is the Sneasler at the moment. So being able to be neutral to the close combat from it and then completely immune to that annoying Dire Claw is so impactful for this Corviknight. And with things like you mentioned before with the bulk up and the roost, you're able to outlive a lot of the threats in the meta right now. And this team, to me, directly kind of seems inspired by Wolfie Glick's team that didn't have the Kilowattrel piece, I believe.
It had interesting.
I had Palma instead. I think Kilowattrel actually has a lot more synergy with something like the Garchomp, right? Where you have 2 flying Pokemon now that you can, you know, fire off those devastating Terra Ground earthquakes.
Yeah, with a Life Orb also. I think Kilowattrel is an interesting niche Pokemon because in this format we don't have like a lot of really like fast powerhouses as we used to have, you know, with Paradox allowed. So Kilowattrel is in an amazing speed tier, being able to just get that fast Tailwind, even though it's not priority, it's a super fast Tailwind, and also has the competitive ability to help Garchomp out, because Garchomp is a strong physical attacker, does not want to get intimidated. So then opponents have to obviously think twice about bringing their intimidate Pokemon, because Kilowattrel can just get stronger if that happens.
And Jamie isn't the only player with a Wheezing. Let's quickly look over Jonathan's team here. They're actually going to be using a Wheezing and Typhlosion as well. People cannot just get enough of this Terrifier Eruption. Just so many damage multipliers. Another Wheezing and Typhlosion here, this time on a more balanced approach with the Rillaboom and the Incineroar, and that Sneasler that I kind of mentioned before.
Yeah, this team is very fun in my opinion, because you probably already noticed there are 3 fake out Pokemon. It's never enough to have, you know, fake out control on your battles. I think this combination of Rillaboom and Incineroar, just having a good Fire Grass core, is always really strong on balanced teams. But if you pair that with one of the fastest fake out users in the format, that annoying Sneasler that you mentioned before, with Dire Claw being such a unique move that can just decide a lot of games with a 50% chance of inducing some status conditions. You have triple fake out, but you also have 2 choice Pokemon, Dragapult with a choice band, Typhlosion with a choice scarf. As you said, that choice scarf option, it's really powerful, especially if your opponent has no resistances. And obviously positioning your strong attackers is going to be the main strategy behind Jonathan's team, in my opinion. Double fake out is not enough. Triple fake out can be a thing here. And Weezing, however, this Weezing is, even though it's the same species, it's actually different than the previous Weezing from the other team. This is a more controlled Weezing with Taunt, Citrus Berry, although it doesn't have Will-O-Wisp, but as it's usually a common move on the Cantonian Weezing. But this is Galarian Weezing. People typically use this Weezing because of its fairy typing, giving it a nice offensive, you know, option into all these dragon types that are around. Dazzling Gleam is the move of choice for this Weezing on Jonathan's team. You have also Taunt to disrupt your opponents, and Citrus Berry to keep you healthy, you know, and force longer battles if possible.
And let's see how both of these Weezings play out, as I believe our game 1 is ready here. I'm really interested to see how these Weezing and Typhlosions play out as we hop into this game 1 as Jonathan versus Jonathan, Zuniga, and Jamie Tan. And we're going to see a Typhlosion and Kilowattrel lead here from Jamie, and an Incineroar Dragapult lead from Jonathan.
Remember, the Typhlosion is actually a ghost type, so it cannot be faked out by Incineroar here. However, Incineroar just being a nice switch in, or just a nice Pokemon to resist our option. There is a Kilowattrel on the field, which already got the competitive boost because Incineroar's Intimidate affected that ability. So you have a lot of options here. You cannot fake out the Typhlosion. You can just protect if you want with Kilowattrel. It is also a Terra Ghost, a defensive Terra here. You can go for Tailwind option if you want. However, these two Pokemon actually resist their option. So I wonder if, Jamie wants to commit into your option. It's obviously a good spread move, but if both of your opponents resist that, I don't know how much damage that can do. And we see a Terra here.
Yeah, and this Terrestrialization is really interesting here. It's going to be from that Dragapult into the Dragon type, just so those Dragon Darts or potentially that Outrage do tons and tons of damage. And I think the idea here with this Terrestrialization Ghost there on Jonathan's side is that with those Dragon Darts, you're going to be able to threaten a lot of damage. While Typhlosion can dish out a lot of damage, and so can Kilowattrel with that competitive boosts, I think the issue with them, or the weakness, is that they're kind of frail. And as we see here with this Kilowattrel, Shadow Ball instead going to the Dragapult there, it's going to be able to live now that it's terrestrialized, and these Dragon Darts, as I mentioned, are going to fire off into both of these frail Pokemon and do tons of damage.
That's a lot of damage to Kilowattrel. However, Kilowattrel opted for a defensive Ghost Terra to be immune to fake out and be able to get that Tailwind. The Tailwind is going to be nice for the rest of the battle. However, Incineroar smartly didn't even try to go for a fake out into that Kilowattrel. Instead, just decided to go for a knockoff into Typhlosion. Really good turn 1 for Jonathan. However, the Kilowattrel is still boosted, and now you have a free switch into Garchomp. Although it's not a flying type anymore, so you cannot just go for Earthquake. And remember that Jonathan has the Rillaboom, which is going to have the power of Earthquake. You can just dump in Tantrum and go for a Discharge if you want. Now the Dragapult is a 50% health. You can even go for Air Slash. I think it's a fair trade for Jamie. You lost your Typhlosion, but you got Tailwind, and your Kilowattrel is boosted.
Yeah, and this Garchomp and Kilowattrel kind of deciding what to lock into. Air Slash always having that chance to miss. Not sure how impactful it is. Maybe expecting something like the Rillaboom to switch in, as you mentioned before, to kind of make sure those Earthquakes aren't hitting as hard in the future. If you're Jonathan, though, I feel like you don't have to bring in the Rillaboom that soon. Of course, if you want to keep your Dragapult safe, this could make a little bit of sense. Pokemon's going to switch in here. Is actually going to be the Rillaboom. So the Jamie getting that Air Slash into that Dragon slot is going to pay off a lot here, doing tons of damage. And again, this is a competitive boost that Air Slash is going to pick up on the Rillaboom.
That's a one-hit knockout into a Pokemon that is actually holding the Assault Vest. Obviously, this is because Kilowattrel got the competitive boost from the turn 1 Intimidate from Incineroar. And now we see a critical hit on Garchomp. I don't think that matters because it's a life for Garchomp, but who knows? Maybe this Incineroar is physically defensive trained or something like that. But Garchomp and Kilowattrel in a kind of like a different spot, because it's not a flying type Kilowattrel, but it's still a Pokemon that can provide that Tailwind. As I said, the turn 1 trade was actually in Jamie's favor, in my opinion, because now you eliminated 2 of the bulkiest Pokemon from the opponent's team, and you still have Tailwind control for the rest of the match.
Yeah, not only do you have Tailwind, I want to speak more on that competitive boost that we saw. Getting a +2 to your special attack from your opponent just leading the Incineroar, being able to one-hit KO, a big threat for this team like Rillaboom, right? Being able to weaken your Garchomp's Earthquake, kind of the main mode here with this Disquake. Being able to stop that and get rid of that Rillaboom is huge, even if it doesn't come up in this game. And as we see here, Jonathan is just going to throw in the towel, realizing both of their Pokemon got one-hit knocked out in that second turn.
Yeah, that was a really fast game 1. I think obviously Kilowattrel played a really important role in this match, because probably Jonathan kind of disrespected a little bit the Kilowattrel maybe, or he didn't expect the Kilowattrel to be up front. Obviously, Typhlosion is a Pokemon that you usually want to respect, and one of the best ways to respect that is leading your resistances, right? And so he led 2 Pokemon that can resist Eruption, like Incineroar and Dragapult. But by leading with Incineroar, you are risking Kilowattrel getting stronger with that competitive boost. And Kilowattrel just proved to be a really important Pokemon in this game 1, setting up the Tailwind, getting that one-hit knockout into an Assault-based Rillaboom with Air Slash. I think that's something, obviously, from Jonathan's perspective, he has to rethink if he maybe wants to lead with something else. Rillaboom is weak to Kilowattrol, but without any boost, I'm pretty sure Rillaboom can survive an Air Slash. So maybe you can change that, you know, your other Fake Out and try to do maybe take a different route here, but you always have to respect the Typhlosion lead also.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty with that is you want Incineroar to kind of be there so you can threaten the knockoff into it. It's not enough sometimes that you resist it. We see how much the Eruption can do to something like Incineroar on a switch-in. So I think that's why Jonathan maybe feels inclined to lead the Incineroar so that you can threaten a knockoff into it, maybe forcing a Terastallization out of the Typhlosion. I think if you go into the Kilowattrol that turn, right, then you double up on it, you get the knockout potentially, you stop it from getting Air Slashes in your Rillaboom, and maybe it's a different game, but that means the Typhlosion is alive instead of the Kilowattrol, and you still have a threat that's threatening super effective damage in your team, and it's really, really difficult. But that was a quick game 1. I'm curious if this game 2 is going to go just as quick.
Yeah, it's going to be honestly very interesting to see what the adaptations can be from both sides. Obviously, from Jamie's perspective, you can say like, okay, this worked for me. I can just lead it again, and I just want to see your reaction to this. But maybe he also understands potentially what the adaptations can be from Jonathan's part. So he probably can also try to move some pieces around, maybe even lead the same and play with them differently. Kilowattrol has to protect, so it could have protected that turn 1. Maybe that's something that Jonathan was suspecting. That's why he didn't double target it. But he just instead decided to go for a Terra Ghost Tailwind immediately. So I'm really excited to see what the adaptations can be in this game number 2 of the set.
Absolutely. And I think another part of it as well is managing that speed control. Is that Kilowattrol getting up that Tailwind is super, super important, I think, for Jamie, because Dragapult outspeeds the rest of your team otherwise. So without that being the Tailwind, I think if you have a lot more leeway if you're Jonathan. So if you can stop that Tailwind somehow, not saying it's easy, but if you can stop it somehow, it makes the matchup a little bit easier, I think, for you. And even if that means forcing that Terastallization Ghost, as we talked about before, that means it's then weak to Knockout, or that means there's not a Terastallization on something like the Typhlosion, for example, as well.
Yeah, and keep in mind that both players have Typhlosion. So I wonder if maybe that can be, you know, one of the options that Jonathan can maybe try to go for in this game too, saying like, okay, I have Scarf Typhlosion, you have Scarf Typhlosion, well, Ghosts are weak to Ghosts, so maybe I can force a speed tie situation and just go for Shadow Ball immediately, and maybe lead something different than Incineroar this time, in case obviously Jamie goes for a Kilowattrol lead. But we have game 2 ready. We're gonna jump into that. This is an exciting match between these two very strong players. Let's see how this game 2 plays out. We see a Rillaboom Dragapult lead this time.
Yeah, and a Kilowattrol, and Jamie switched it up this time, instead having the Toedscruel immediately here, which is a very, very interesting Pokemon. Do you want to explain to us why?
Yeah, Toedscruel is an interesting Pokemon. It's really fast, but the ability Mycelial Might forces it to always move last in the priority bracket if you're using a status move. However, you can easily change that by bringing Weezing at some point and get access to that really fast score, like using your speed tier. This Toedscruel cannot be flinched. Keep in mind, it's holding a Cover Cloak. So you can even just say like, you know what, I'm not really going to bring Weezing here. I can just Spore you, even though it's not going to be a faster Spore. I'm slower than Dragapult anyways. I can just Spore you. But I'm really excited to see what the Toedscruel can accomplish in this match. It has the option to also redirect attacks to itself if you want to. We do see a Terastallization here. I think it's from Dragapult. It's going to go for a Terra Dragon immediately, and I wonder how Jamie is going to respond to this Terra turn 1.
And this is going to be a really interesting turn because you don't have something that's immediately pressuring. You have the Kilowattrol, but this time it has no competitive boost, and you don't have something like the Typhlosion next to it that maybe you're okay with sacrificing if it means your opponent's doubling up into it instead. The Toedscruel isn't threatening a one-hit KO into either of these Pokemon like the Typhlosion would have been. Instead of threatening a Spore, which is still threatening, but this Grassy Glide is going to do almost 50%. And with something like a Dragon Dart, this might just pick up on both the Pokemon.
Is it enough?
Or, excuse me, on the Toedscruel.
Is it enough to KO the Toedscruel though? And it's enough! That's the power of a Choice Band. Remember guys, this Dragapult is actually a choice band variant with the Terra Dragon. It's just able to dish out so much damage. Obviously, the Grassy Glide on the Rillaboom probably helped to pick up that one-hit KO with the Dragon Darts. However, similar to Game 1, Jamie managed to set up the Tailwind. This time, though, there is no competitive boost on the Kilowattrel. But keep in mind that by going for a Terra Ghost, Kilowattrel is now vulnerable to being KO'd from a Grassy Glide, given that it's not a flying type anymore. We do see a Garchomp switch, and so this turn 2 is going to be really interesting to see what can Jamie accomplish with this Tailwind, given that this time there's no Typhlosion in the back and there's no competitive boost on the Kilowattrel either.
Yeah, and this Garchomp switch is really interesting to me, I think. I think Corviknight potentially could have been a bit of a stronger swap in there, being able to resist not only the Dragon Darts that this Dragapult is locked into and the Rillaboom. Maybe you could have gone for a Bulk Up or something like that, but this Garchomp instead is going to immediately threaten with the super effective damage. This Incineroar, though, is going to be able to intimidate the Garchomp as it comes in there for Jonathan. This Kilowattrel is, again, like you said before, in range of that Grassy Glide, so I could see a play like the Grassy Glide from Jonathan going into the Kilowattrel, critical hit not really mattering there, getting rid of the Kilowattrel and the Terastallization option from Jamie there, and this Garchomp is left at -1 to maybe go for a Dragon Claw or something like that.
Yeah, I think, you know, the Terra actually worked against Jamie this time around, because he was trying to go for a fake out play turn 1, right? Like, it's obviously a Pokemon that doesn't want to get fake out because you would lose your Sash, so the Terra Ghost kind of made sense. You want to avoid the fake out, but unfortunately, it just makes you vulnerable to Grassy Glide. Kilowattrel is not a bulky Pokemon. It's actually quite frail, so even a Grassy Glide would be enough in that range, given that it's not a flying type. We do see the Corviknight now as the last one. It's a really different game from Game 1. We do see a Protect. I wonder what can Corviknight accomplish. It is a very bulky Pokemon and it is in front of 2 physical attackers. This Corviknight does have a way to increase its bulk with the move Bulk Up. We do see a Fake Out and would hammer into the Garchomp that just protected here.
Yeah, and that Protect from Garchomp, making sure, you know, it gets to live that turn. You know the Fake Out from Incineroar is inevitable, so just making sure your Garchomp doesn't get immediately demolished by this Wood Hammer is kind of what you need to get back in this game if you're Jamie. Losing both of your Pokemon so easily, I feel like, is going to make sure this game 2 is super quick. Stopping Tantrum at the -1, not going to be able to pick up the Incineroar there. I think if you do want to weigh back in this game, Jamie showing us here, going for that Bulk Up to kind of try to survive in front of these 2 physical threats. Jonathan's Incineroar does have Flare Blitz, though, which a lot of Incineroar have been dropping. That Wood Hammer knocking out that Garchomp is going to remove him immediately from the field as well. But as I was saying, the Corviknight is usually not threatened, as these Incineroars don't carry Flare Blitz anymore. But Jonathan's carrying Flare Blitz is not good for Jamie here in this matchup, as we see it does a lot of damage even at +1.
Yeah, and well, if there's a Corviknight, there's a way probably here if the entire team from Jonathan's side is actually physical, because if you look at its team, it's mainly physically oriented. We do know the Dragapult is in the back. We still don't know what's the last one. It could be that Typhlosion, but if there's a situation where Corviknight can get a couple of Bulk Ups, you see how little damage the Wood Hammer is doing, and it also has access to Body Press. We can one-shot Incineroar. Flare Blitz is, unfortunately for Corviknight, doing so much damage. Corviknight does have access to Roost, though, so I wonder if Corviknight can maybe 1v4 in this case.
Yeah, so I think Bulk Up there is a bit interesting because you're not going to be able to live whatever the attack is. Even if you were +6, the next attack is going to be enough to get this knockout. I think if you do go for a Roost, as you mentioned before, not only do you get the half of your 50% healing back, but you would have gotten that last turn of Grassy Terrain healing as well to maybe fish it out. And seeing Dragapult come in here maybe lead me to believe that there's another physical attacker on the back. If it was Typhlosion, you would just bring that in, right? Or excuse me, it could still be Typhlosion. There's still Tailwind that Jonathan is playing for. Outrage there. Going to just be able to get the KO on Corviknight, though.
I think Tailwind was actually over in the previous turn because the Incineroar from Jonathan won first, and probably what Jamie was thinking was that maybe his Corviknight was faster than the opponents Incineroar. Maybe that was the thing, but we saw that Incineroar just went first with Flare Blitz. So unfortunately for Jamie, his Corviknight couldn't do it. It was a really, really good Pokemon to have in that scenario, at least. You know, Corviknight with Bulk Up, with Roost, is a Pokemon that you can technically use in a 1v3 scenario against purely physical attackers. However, as I already explained, the speed interaction here between Corviknight and Incineroar was probably something that Jamie was not counting, and he probably thought the Corviknight was faster, so that's why he went for the Bulk Up instead of the Roost. But maybe Jonathan's Incineroar is trained a little bit speedier to just be speedier and outspeed some things. It was a really, really good game too for Jonathan. Now the set is tied 1-1, and I really, really like the fact that, you know, this time the Rillaboom was the fake out user that he picked for turn 1, trying to just put more pressure right off the bat without having to worry about, you know, the Kilowattrel getting the competitive boost. And Kilowattrel, although it was an amazing Pokemon to have on that game 1, it didn't do much in game 2 other than setting up Tailwind and just going down in the turn number 2, I think. So this is something that obviously Jamie has to reevaluate how he wants to utilize the Kilowattrel. Maybe protecting it a little bit, maybe not terrestrializing too early, maybe having a way so you can actually utilize, you know, the potential competitive boost if the Incineroar comes at some point. But it's going to be a really interesting game 3. What do you do if you are, you know, Jamie? Do you just continue leading the Kilowattrel with, I think in this case he led it with the Garchomp, I think. No, he led it with Toedscrew. The Toedscrew also didn't do much in the game other than just being there and being obviously a very annoying Pokemon to respect, and that's why the Rillaboom from Jonathan's side went for a Grassy Glide combined with the Dragon Darts from Dragapult. But I wonder if Jamie probably thinks that Toedscrew doesn't offer much for the upcoming game 3, and he maybe changes his playing a little bit.
Yeah, so I was really impressed by the way Jonathan kind of adapted in that game too, as you mentioned a little bit or alluded to, that the Rillaboom being the fake out option there, I think was really, really smart, because unlike Incineroar, you have access to a priority move, and in Grassy Glide, recognizing that Jamie really has to go for the Terrestrialization Ghost on the Kilowattrel if they want to guarantee they get up Tailwind. Of course, you could play the quote-unquote mind games to protect and things like that, but to really guarantee it and to guarantee you get some sort of lead or momentum is you Terrestrialize Ghost. But then, as you mentioned, you're weak, or not weak to, but you are taking neutral damage from those Grassy Glides, and with the bulk that Kilowattrel has, which is not much, you're usually dropping to the combination of that Dragon Darts and the Grassy Glides. So not really giving Kilowattrel to fire off those air slashes or do anything past the Tailwind, and getting rid of Terrestrialization was really big in that game 2 for Jonathan. And I'm really curious to how this game 3 is going to play out, as I think we have it ready for you here.
Yeah, game 3 is ready. It's going to be interesting to see how these two players can adapt their leads, their plans for this deciding game 3 of this round. We do see the same lead from Jonathan is a Dragapult and Rillaboom lead, and we do see the Typhlosion this time around from Jamie's side. Once again, just going back to that game 1 plan with the Kilowattrel, and I'm interested to see how, you know, Jonathan can adapt to this, because unlike the previous time, Typhlosion is faster than both Dragapult and Rillaboom because of the Choice Scarf, and can dish out so much damage with either a Ghost type move into the Dragapult or a Fire type move into the Rillaboom.
Yeah, and we see Jamie kind of deciding if they want to swap the Kilowattrel, realizing that both of the games that Terra Ghost was kind of obvious, or that they've played for the Terrestrialization Ghost, and Jonathan hasn't faked out in that slot either time. So in this game 3, it really comes down to, is Jonathan going to fake me out this time? So swapping in Corviknight for that slot and going for a supercharged attack with their Typhlosion makes a lot of sense here. You're potentially getting rid of the Rillaboom if Jonathan doesn't want to burn the Terrestrialization, and doing a lot of damage to this Dragapult, even though it's resisted, just because of how much power that this Terrifier Eruption could be packing in their Typhlosion, or from Typhlosion. It does so much damage that Jonathan just has to respond to it. Not opting to Terrestrialize your Rillaboom and instead going for a Grassy Glide, breaking that Focus Sash. Eruption's gonna come out here.
Is it enough? It is enough to one-shot the Rillaboom, doing almost 50% to that Dragapult, even with the resistance. There is a critical hit on the Rillaboom. I'm not sure if that matters. Of course, Rillaboom is holding the Assault Vest and is known for being like decently tanky the special side, but it is a Eruption 150 base power. We do see a Dragon Darts, not quite to be enough to KO the Typhlosion. And Corviknight was an amazing switch in there. It's a Steel type, so it resists both Dragon and Grass. So that was an amazing switching from Jamie, keeping the Sash active on the Kilowatt later and just keeping it healthy for the upcoming turns. We do see a Typhlosion now from Jonathan's side, and it's going to be a Typhlosion against Typhlosion. Keep in mind, both Typhlosions are choice log, and unfortunately for Jamie, his Typhlosion is not healthy enough to utilize that full power option anymore.
Yeah, but what's really interesting here is that Jamie's Corviknight is actually Terastallization Fire, meaning it will be able to resist the Typhlosion, but then you're going to be taking neutral damage from these Terra Dragon Dart. So Jamie really has to make a decision here with the lesser of two evils. I think you would much rather take the Dragon Darts because you can at least kind of tank them out, or excuse me, not tank them out. You have the Citrus Berry and it's divided between the two targets. The thing is, though, that this Eruption is most definitely picking up on your Typhlosion. Jamie really has to kind of navigate this difficult spot here, opting for that Terastallization Fire on the Corviknight, trying to figure out how they can live this turn and just get through. Jonathan has so much damage on the board here, and as a raw Eruption just picks up the Typhlosion there and bringing Corviknight into that Citrus Berry range, which is really important as this double choice band locked Dragon Darts are going to fire off into this Corviknight.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a speed tie. Keep in mind that both Typhlosions are choice scarf, so it's going to be a matter of how these Typhlosions are trained, but maybe it was a speed tie. And we do see a critical hit. Keep in mind that Dragon Darts, it's a 2-hit move that usually hits one slot with each of the darts, but it has this more targeting, so if one slot protects or goes down first, then the 2 darts go into the other slot. And unfortunately for Jamie, the Terra on the Corviknight didn't actually work for him because the Typhlosion went down for the Dragon Darts. And now we do have the Kilowatt. However, this time it is outsped by both Pokemon from Jonathan's side. Remember, the Typhlosion is Choice Scarf, and we see Garchomp. I wonder if there's any chance for this Kilowatt to be able to get that Tailwind off to maybe help the Garchomp outspeed and get some KOs. Garchomp is in a nice spot offensively because it has Dragon moves for the Dragon type and a Ground move for the Fire type. However, it's outsped, and that's going to be a tough one.
As this Eruption fires off here from the Typhlosion, does so much damage to the Kilowatt, bringing it down to Sash. And of course, not having Tailwind, as we kind of talked about before, not having Tailwind is so bad for Jamie, where you really need the speed control. And not only are you getting outsped by something like Dragon Bolt, but the Choice Scarf Typhlosion as well. And as we saw there, just so much damage is coming off from Jonathan. Jonathan doing a really good job of concealing that